Hi guys, my name is PJ Bridger and I am a product specialist for Roland. Today I'm going to be taking you through the SP-404 Mark II update version 404. After compiling feedback from artists and users, this update is packed with exciting new features guaranteed to ignite your creativity and enhance your workflow. From a brand new loop capture mode to the ability to export multiple pads simultaneously, and even integration with the Koala app from Elf Audio, there's a lot to explore. As always, there is loads to cover, so let's get straight into it. We now have a loop capture function. This is inspired by and is very similar to the loop capture from the legendary SP-404. To use this function, we need to change the system parameters beforehand. You can do this in the utility menu, but we can also do this by holding shift and pressing in the value knob. If you set this to looper, then the skip back sampling will no longer be available. We can now press mark to enter the looper mode. In here we can use the C1 knob to change the measures. You can leave it on free to record for as long as you want, or you can choose between 1 measure, 2 measures or 4 measures. I'm going to leave mine on 2 measures. We can then use C2 to change the auto trigger mode. We can go to off. This means it will record as soon as we press the record button, or we can have it on. This means that the recording will start when audio is detected. You can also use the C3 knob to change the BPM. I'm going to leave mine on 90. If you hold down shift, you can see more options such as your bus options. You can have it on looper to enable the use of overdubs, or you can choose from your different effects bus settings, or have it on dry for no effects at all. You can also change your routing using the C2 knob. I'm going to leave mine on mix, and using the value knob at the bottom you can change your metronome level. I'm going to leave mine on 5. So now we are ready to start our live loop. I have some drums and samples in my SP and I'm going to record them in, and then I'm going to add a bass line using the Ira Compact S1. If we wanted to, at this point we could press resample. This would mean that after the first recording, it would automatically start overdubbing. I'm going to leave this off for now. To start our recording, we're going to press the record button. You can now see the record wait message as it's waiting for a signal. I'm now going to press shift and pad 9 to turn my metronome on. And now I'm going to play my hi-hat in time with the metronome. We can now press the resample button to add an overdub to our recording. I'm now going to continue to add in more samples over the top of my recording. If you make a mistake whilst recording, you can press shift and pattern select to undo the last recording. If you would like your recording back, you can press shift and pattern select to redo. I am now going to add a bass line from the S1 into our live loop. To do this, make sure your external instrument is connected via audio cables and you have external source turned on. I'm now going to play my loop and jam over it for a little while, and then when I'm ready to record, I will press the resample button to do an overdub. And there we go, we have a really cool live looped recording. We can change the BPM by using the C3 knob. If you would like to get back to the original BPM, just press pitch speed to reset. You could delete your recording using delete, or we can export this recording to a pad by pressing copy. Now I just need to choose a pad to save to, and if we exit out of looper mode using mark, here we have our exported live loop recording. Thanks to a collaboration with Elf Audio, we can now use our SP-404 Mark II to control the awesome Koala app. To do this, connect your SP-404 Mark II to a device running the Koala app and it will automatically switch to controller mode. In this mode, the SP will now trigger samples within the app by pressing the chosen pad. You can access sounds loaded into your different Koala sample banks by using the bank buttons A to D. If you go to banks E to J, we can also play sounds we have loaded into our SP on those banks. If you would like to record one of those samples into Koala, press play on the sample on the SP and hold an empty pad in Koala. Also, whilst using Koala at any time, you can press mark to use the skip back sampling or record your Koala sounds into the looper. If we go back into the Koala bank here, if we press a sample and then press the Start End button, you can access the Koala Edit page. Here you can control parameters for individual samples, including gate, loop, and if you press loop twice, you can get into ping pong mode where the sample plays forward and then backwards. You can also reverse your sample. If you press Start End again, you can access a mix page where you can use an EQ. If you press the pitch speed button, you can use the control knobs on the SP to change parameters like volume, pitch and panning. If you hold shift inside this menu, you can also use the control knobs to access attack, release and tone parameters for your sample. If you press exit, it will close the menu. When you are in the main Koala sample page, if you hold shift, you can use the SP to access many features of the app. Most of these correspond to similar shift commands you will be used to seeing on your SP. For example, if you press Shift and Pad 1, you can turn fixed velocity on or off. Also, if you play a sample, and then you press Shift and Pad 4, you will now be able to play this sample chromatically using the pads. You will notice also a small keyboard appears on the sample. If you move to the sequence screen by pressing the pattern select button, using the shift menu you can turn the metronome on and off using pad 9, and pad 11 will give you access to the BPM settings. Shift and pad 13 will give you access to the settings menu, and shift and pad 14 will give you access to the export menu. So if I play a pattern I made earlier, if we press Pattern Edit, we can enter the Koala piano roll. Here we can add or remove notes using the app, or if we press record, we can record directly into our sequence. If we want to remove those notes, we can actually press Shift and Pattern Select to undo. I'm going to press record to stop recording, and if I press button edit, we'll come back to the main screen. If I press roll, I can enter the performance screen. Here you can add performance effects over your pattern. So, with our pattern still playing, remember you can still use banks E to J to trigger samples you have loaded into the SP. So you can jam between your Koala projects and also your SP files. We now have an awesome sound generator which is new in update version 404. To activate the sound generator, press Shift and record setting. This will bring you into the sound generator menu. Using the C1 knob, we can change our wave type, and if we press a pad, we will hear the sound. As you can hear, there are a lot of sounds to choose from. I'm going to leave mine on triangle. Using the C2 knob, we can adjust the frequency of our wave in semitones. And using C3, we can adjust the volume of our wave. If we press Shift, we can use C1 to adjust the pad length. This is how long the sound will play for when exported. And using C3, we could change the pan of our sound left or right. Using the value knob, we can adjust the scale. The note will give us a visual indication of our chosen note. We can adjust the octave. We can move the root note with offset, and we can choose from preset envelope types that adjust the attack, and we can also adjust micro tuning. So, when we are happy with our sound, we can press record and choose an empty pad to export to. Now we just press record again to export the sound. Now we are in the main menu, and here we have our sound. We can now go into chromatic mode to play or resample our sound. Or we could add some cool effects and use skip back to create our own custom sound. Here I am using skip back to find the note with the distortion movement I just played. I can then use truncate to crop the recording. And I can save the new bass note to a pad. Taking inspiration from the classic Roland VP9000 Veriphrase sampler, the 404 update adds a groove function. This allows you to put interesting glitch and groove effects onto your sample. For the best results, you will want to use this with a drum break or sample that has a correctly analysed BPM. I am going to use this drum break. Now, if I go into the pitch speed menu and I press roll, we enter the groove menu. In the groove menu, we can use C1 to change the humanize amount. This will introduce slight differences over time to create a more human feel. We then have the rate of the effect on C2. You use higher numbers for more intensity. And then C3 will turn the effect on or off and choose the groove parameter. So if I trigger my drum loop now and turn groove on, you will hear the effect. I can also increase the intensity. As you can hear, this adds an interesting glitchy groove to our drum break. In version 404, you can now set how many measures you record or resample before you start your recording. This is very useful as it allows you to create loose, unquantized live recordings that will always stay perfectly in time. To do this, press record or resample, and then choose the pad you want to record to. You can then use C1 to set your BPM, and you can use C2 to choose the amount of measures you want to record for, from 1 measure all the way up to infinite measures, which is free time recording. I'm going to put mine on 2 measures. Then if we turn on the metronome, you can now just play in time to create your recording. At the end of your set measure amount, the recording will automatically stop and you will have a perfect 2-bar loop. You can now edit patterns using the Microscope function. This allows you to edit different parameters of each individual step, including pitch, velocity, and timing. To do this, enter the Pattern Select menu. Then choose the pattern you want to edit and press Shift and Record to enter TR Record mode. We can now press the sub pad and choose one of the samples recorded into the pattern. I'm going to choose the bass here. Now if I hold down Pattern Edit and choose a step, we can see the parameters for that step. In here, the C1 knob is used if there is more than 1 hit on that step, which will allow us to choose which hit we are editing. We can also use the C2 knob to change the pitch. And we can use the C3 knob to change the velocity. We can also use the value knob to change the timing of a note. If you hold Shift, you can move it by bigger increments. And you could also press Delete to delete the note entirely. If we are on a sound which has more than 1 hit, once we are in the Microscope menu, we can just press another pad to change the parameters of each different hit. We now have a new tap recording function in the pattern sequencer. To use this, choose a sound you want to add, and now you can just tap the record button to add live recorded hits into our pattern. This makes it very easy to add live recorded hits into our TR Rec sequence quickly. You now have the ability to record pads that do not contain a sample into the pattern sequencer. This is useful because it means you can trigger external MIDI instruments without having to add audio to those pads beforehand. For example, I have my IRA Compact S1 attached here via TRS MIDI, and I have the audio coming back into the SP. I also have my SP set to MIDI mode B in the utility menu, and this allows me to play notes on the S1 using the pads of my SP. We can now take this into the pattern sequencer and we can record those notes into a pattern. So if I trigger my pattern now and press record, when I play the notes on the SP, they will be recorded into my pattern. And there we go, the MIDI notes from the SP are now recorded into my pattern and are triggering notes on the S1. You can now export your patterns as multiple WAV files to your SD card. To do this, enter the pattern sequencer, then press Shift and Pad 14, choose Export to SD card, and choose Multipad. Choose the pattern you want to export. I'm going to choose this one, and then press Enter. These files will now be in the Export folder on your SD card. To perform a multipad export using the SP-404 app on your computer, connect your SP to the computer and start the app. At the bottom of the app, choose Patterns. Then drag your chosen pattern onto the Export Pattern box. From the drop-down menu, you can choose SMF, which will export the MIDI information, Stem, which will bounce each individual sound, or Bounce, which will export the pattern as one file. I'm going to choose Stem. Then press OK. You can then press the Open Folder button to view your files. You can now offline bounce your pattern chains from the pattern sequencer. To do this, enter the pattern sequencer and press Copy. Then hold down the Hold button and select a pattern chain. Then choose a pad to record to and press Copy again to bounce the files to that location. Your pattern chain will now be bounced as an audio file to that pad. Sample Merge has now been added. This allows you to combine multiple samples into a single sample. To do this, press Shift and Resample and then select the pads you want to combine. I'm going to combine these two pads. So now we press Shift and Resample. We select our pads. We can use C1 here to choose the processing type. And then we can use the value knob to move between our samples and choose the percentage that will end up in our final sample. I'm going to bring this one down to 70%. Then you just press Enter and choose a pad to record to. Press Enter again. And here we have our combined sample. You can now import project files directly from your SD card. To do this, drop a project folder into your Import folder on your SD card. It must be named in the correct format. For example, all capitals, project_01. Then, with the SD card back inside your SP, press Shift and Pad 14 to go to the Import menu. Choose Import from SD card from the menu. Then choose Project, then choose your desired project file, choose a place to load it to, then press Enter. And there we go, now we can load our project on our SP. You can now convert your older projects from your SP-404A or SX directly on the Mark II. To do this, load your old projects into the Roland folder on your Mark II SD card, or take one of the SD cards from your SP-404A or SX and insert it into your Mark II. I have an SD card here directly from my SP-404A. Let's go to the Import menu by pressing Shift and Pad 14. Choose Import from SD card. Let's choose Project SX. It will say folder error here, but if you press Roll, it will take you to the correct folder. Then choose SP-404SX. Choose a pad to import to and press Enter. And your old SX or A project will be converted into an SP-404 Mark II project. And there we go, we have our old project fully converted and now on our SP-404 Mark II. can go into the projects menu here and choose it, and there we go. In DJ mode, you can now import samples from your SD card whilst playing tracks. This means there is no need to stop mixing whilst importing new tracks to add to your set. So we're in DJ mode here and I have 2 tracks in the mix. I can now push enter and I can come to import sample. I can choose a sample from my list, choose a pad to import to and press enter to import that sample. Here you can see it's importing whilst we're still in the mix. If we wanted to now, that song would be ready to use in our mix. Now, when you are importing samples from your SD card, you can continue to perform other tasks. This is especially useful when importing larger files, enabling you to keep your creative flow going. To do this, press Shift and Pad 14, choose Import from SD card, choose Sample, scroll down to the one you want to import, choose a pad to import to and press Enter. As you can see, this is now importing. And now we can leave this menu and we can see this still has the indicator here showing us it is importing the sample. Now we can go and perform other tasks. Even edit audio files. All whilst our sample is still importing. And here we go, we have our imported sample. When importing samples from the SD card, you can now set parameters. To do this, go to the import menu, choose import from SD card, choose sample, find the file you would like to import, and choose the pad you would like to import it to. Here now you can take gate on or off, add loop, or reverse, and these settings will be added on the file import. You can now rename files and projects on the SP. To do this, press the pad you want to change, hold remain, scroll down with the value knob to name, press enter, then you can use the value knob to scroll through the letters of the name and press enter to change a letter. Let's change this to 2 for example. When you are finished, scroll to OK and press in the value knob to confirm. So there you go guys, those are the new features in the SP-404 Mark II 404 update. Go grab the update from Roland.com and make sure you register your SP-404 Mark II for all the latest info. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you next time.